It was the last golden moment of the evening when Meera stood at the edge of the fields, waiting in hopeful anticipation for her hero to arrive. A soft breeze stirred the grass's green blades, and the dusty paths in the distance seemed to smile. Under her feet, like a cushion of warmth, she lifted the black scarf over her head and breathed in the sweet scent of ripe mangoes, nestled in her small basket. With every heartbeat, hope swelled within her, like a promise of a new season. But in that very moment, 3 shadows emerged, the boys whose chilling footsteps carried an icy threat. At first, Meera thought they had come in playful spirits, but when their eyes fixed on her gentle smile, a shiver ran through her soul. One of them whispered softly, "Why not walk with us today?" And another reached for her basket. Meera bowed her head and refused, but her plea fell on deaf ears. Cruel smiles spread across their faces, and Meera's innocence was about to be shattered. Fear settled in her heart like a mountain. Nightfall wrapped the fields in darkness like jail bars, while thorny bushes closed in around her, and the silence carried the thunder of her ragged breaths. Meera tried to scream, but her voice vanished into the shadows. And in that final golden moment of dusk, she lost her innocence forever. She was 16 when her familiar world shattered into 1,000 pieces. In her small village where each dawn brought a desperate struggle to fill empty stomachs, Meera carried hope, like a tiny lantern in her palm. That evening, as she walked along the dusty edge of the fields clutching a basket of ripe mangoes, 3 boys from wealthy families appeared like dark clouds on the horizon. At first, she thought they were merely passing by, but their promises of friendship soon turned cruel. Under the fading light, they forced her into the tall grass, silencing her cries and stealing her innocence in the hush of those whispering stalks. When it was over, Meera emerged hollow and trembling. The same cracked earth and weathered walls stood around her, but nothing felt the same. At home, she huddled in silent corners, unable to speak. Her mother's gentle hands could not soothe the storm raging inside her. Each heartbeat echoed the horror she could not escape. The next morning, her parents carried her trembling figure to the village council, begging for justice. But poverty rendered their pleas worthless. The boys' families quietly bought off the officials. Witnesses were intimidated into silence, and any record of the crime disappeared. "A poor girl's tears don't feed anyone," sneered the council elder, shutting the doors of justice in Meera's face. Left alone in a world that valued money more than human dignity, Meera felt her spirit fracture, broken and voiceless. She considered disappearing altogether. One night, however, she stumbled upon an old, tattered notebook, her childhood journal filled with unfinished poems and stories. With shaking hands, she opened its yellowed pages and found her younger self's words. Meera, the girl who loves flowers, gathering courage. She picked up a pen and wrote, "I have wept my grievances into these lines, letting pain shape the letters of my voice. Yet this story remains unfinished. I will ignite its final light." As the ink spilled, Meera felt a spark of life reawaken within her. Writing became her refuge, each page a promise that she would not vanish in silence. Over the following nights, she filled page after page with raw verses, pouring out her sorrow and her defiance. "My voice may tremble, but it will rise, a whisper turned roar against the night. These wounds will not consume me, for hope burns brighter than despair." She slipped her poems into secret letters passed among friends. At first, only a few neighbors read her desperate lines, but soon her words spread beyond the village. A local journalist heard whispers of a silent girl whose poetry cut deeper than any blade, and he wrote a short article. A women's rights group in the city picked up the story and shared it on social media. Volunteers offered legal advice, emotional support, and the promise of a lawyer. Though Meera could not yet stand in court herself, her story stood before the world. It traveled on dusty roads and through invisible networks, carried by voices outraged at the injustice. The same council that had once shrugged off her family now found itself under intense scrutiny. Under mounting pressure, they called an official inquiry, but this time, they could not simply hush it away. On a dawn crisp with anticipation, villagers lit candles and lined the path to the council hall. They held placards bearing lines from Meera's poems. Hear the voice they tried to steal, and justice is not bought with bribes. Meera, small and fragile in the golden morning light, led the procession. Her voice trembled as she began to recite. No longer silent in the shadows, I carry each wound into the sun. Let the world bear witness to this truth. A girl's courage cannot be undone. As her words rang through the crowd, the walls of indifference began to crack. Inside the hall, the council elders watched, their faces ashen. From the back of the room, a lawyer rose and announced that Meera's case would finally proceed through proper legal channels. Months passed. Witnesses came forward at last, speaking with newfound courage. Evidence that had been buried under bribes was unearthed. And when the day of judgment arrived, Meera sat just inside the courtroom door, clutching her notebook close to her heart. The judge's gavel fell like a bell tolling justice at last. The 3 boys were convicted, sentenced to prison time and heavy fines. The verdict rippled through the region, sparking conversations about power, poverty, and the resilience of the human spirit. When Meera stepped out of the courthouse, tears streaming down her face, she felt both the weight of the past and the lightness of a new beginning. Reporters gathered around her, but she held up her notebook instead of speaking. Its pages were now filled with the story of her survival, a testament that no voice should ever be silenced. In the years that followed, Meera returned to school and became the village's youngest legal advocate. She kept her notebook on display in the community library she helped establish, where every girl could see that their stories mattered. At night, beneath the same stars that once watched her suffer, she continued to write. Let no wound stay unspoken, no injustice hide in the dark. For every voice that rises, a new dawn finds its spark. And so her lantern of hope burned on, a beacon for all who believed that even the deepest pain can be transformed into the fiercest fight for justice.